It is Wednesday and the deadline for Trump's ultimatum has passed. And are we in total war with Iran? The answer is no. We had a real Taco Tuesday and Trump decided to extend the ceasefire and actually agree to a 2-week ceasefire. More importantly, Iran agreed to it. Trump was pretty obvious that he was going to do something like that. Even though I warned everyone there is a real tail risk here. What we have seen now is the White House coming up with this thing here based on conversations with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir of Pakistan, yada, yada, yada. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran, but a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. So we have a 2-week delay. I want to comment on that. What does it all mean? I'm not going to comment too much on the political situation. You guys see it on X and all over the place. Everyone is chipping in. I give you my quick, very high level, no nonsense rundown of the situation and what it means for us as investors in the market, whichever you are, retail investor, institutional investor, we all want to make the right decision here. As you remember, I said this is too much risk for me. I'm taking stakes off the table. I did that when Tesla was around 360, 365. Now in pre-market or post-market, we are already back to that level. So I'm pretty happy about that. I was able to de-risk without any kind of damage so far. Let's see. But it's time to go a little risk on. First of all, let's assess the political situation quickly so we can triangulate if this is fake news, if we go into war away again in 2 weeks, if this is just something Trump says and then he reverses course, or if Israel reverses course, or if it's more serious this time. A first little hint I want to give everyone for what I'm going to say next is look at this. This is an official White House tweet. This is a Donald Trump tweet. This is from the White House account. And you will notice the whole format here and the language is very different. It's a very stark contrast from that extremely unhinged Easter post of President Trump where he threatened the end of civilization and used the F word. Well, he didn't threaten civilizational end on Easter. He did that on Tuesday. But on Easter, a very unhinged tweet with the F word and praise to Allah, mocking Allah and all kinds of stuff. Very Christian, uneasterly, and people were very unhappy about that and said this is a warning sign the president is losing his marbles. And whichever it is, it definitely looked like it. And so this is a very stark contrast. And I think that's very important. Someone in the White House, probably everyone, has told the president, dude, you can't do that anymore. And we see a clear attempt to be a little bit more disciplined, which means the situation is extremely serious for the United States, for specifically Trump. I do think what happened here is that there was an extreme outcry in the United States and around the world about this Easter tweet and what happened on Tuesday. I think there's enormous pressure on President Trump to not do that again, especially also internally. We have something between the lines. You can read it that J.D. Vance was very active. He was probably mostly in charge of getting this done, finding Pakistan as an excuse how we can now get to the ceasefire because Iran basically didn't want to talk to them. So I think these are all signs that a further escalation of this war has become much less likely with this move. Because what we have now is a 2-week ceasefire. The bears would say, well, good luck with that. Israel or whoever or Trump is just going to cheat on them and then bomb them again and start the whole thing from scratch. I actually think the probability for this is very low at this point, or let's say at least low. It has gone from 50% of escalation to less than 5%. That is my assessment. Why? Because the US is in big trouble here, in case you didn't notice. And we have a lot of little pieces of evidence for that. First of all, when you look at the 10-point plan from Iran that was put forward, that we basically have now here on the table. Look at that. This is the 10-point plan the US has effectively agreed upon for these 2 weeks. The US must fundamentally commit to guaranteeing non-aggression. That's quite something. Continuation of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. That is crazy. That is actually the old plan. We have a new 10-point plan. Let me pull this up. Where Iran basically says they are going to charge $2 million per vessel that goes through the strait, and Trump is okay with that, which is an enormous win for Iran because they effectively now seized the right to charge tolls on the entire Strait of Hormuz. And that is Quite astounding and quite the win. Let's see here. That is the latest. Guarantee that Iran will not be attacked again. Iran would impose a $2 million fee per ship transiting Hormuz. Iran would split these fees with Oman. Iran would establish rules for safe passage through Hormuz. So these are all indications Iran is now controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Not as it did before, the last 2 weeks in terms of military terms, but now baked in long-term the right to charge fees. And you can also tell that Iran has a bunch of pretty smart people there because they didn't say they want to seize control. They split it with Oman. Oman, of course, on the other side of the strait, and together they have a much more defensible case because Oman is friendly to the West as part of the GCC. And that means now it sounds like a much more reasonable proposal. They're saying, look, we are at the strait here. Here's the actual map. This is the strait. Here's the United Arab Emirates. Here's Dubai. Here's Ras Al Khaimah. Here is the capital of Oman. Here's Iran. And then Oman is basically also up here, this little thing. And it's very elegant that Iran basically says, I'm charging $2 million per vessel now, new fee, but I split it with Oman, so because we too have to keep the strait open or control it, which is of course bogus, no one has to do anything, it's kind of a threat. So the fact that we are seeing all these things and Trump agreeing to that is a very clear indication what's going on. There was a very huge problem on the US side to continue this, and the idea to start this all over again does not seem very appealing. I think behind the scenes there are significant measures taken now in the United States administration that Trump will not do that again. That is my take on the situation. That is why I'm decreasing my risk significantly. Israel was rumored in the beginning, yesterday night, to actually be part of that agreement, but already it seems like they're, of course, not keeping up to it. I think Iran also shot at them before they agreed. So I think the Iran-Israel situation is going to keep being bad, but that's not the worst thing because Israel can't do much without the United States. They cannot threaten the whole Strait of Hormuz. They might try, but Israel is also getting extremely isolated. They're losing a lot of leverage. And I think as part of that overhaul in the White House that's going on behind the scenes, I think there will also be a massive loss of influence from the Israel side because the political costs are just ridiculously high for the GOP, for JD Vance, for Rubio, and of course for Trump. So that is my assessment. That is why I do not believe this is just a ceasefire and then they are starting all over again with some excuses. I think the pressure on the US is very serious to stop this whole situation, both internally from the GOP, from other people in the administration, from the American people, and especially from the American right. I don't know if you have seen Tucker Carlson commenting on this whole thing, total disaster for Trump. So there's enormous pressure, but also globally. You can be guaranteed that Europe, that China, that India are now taking all necessary measures to prevent this from happening again. Doesn't mean it can't escalate again, but the cost would be ridiculous for Trump. So I do think this is lasting. You can never be sure, but I decrease my risk 50% down to 5%, which means for me it's now a little bit risk on again. You know, notwithstanding any comments on Tesla I have. But for the portfolio as a whole, I think we should be in a good position now. And the Iran situation, we also should not underestimate the power of the people. The power of the people, I have another video coming out actually on Germany and then referencing also what happened in the Netherlands. Very surprising, very promising news that the German government has actually now taken off the table their completely insane requirement for all German men between 17 and 45 to register if they want to leave the country with the army. So they basically wanted to start building a wall so no German can leave, to then recruit them all and send them to the Eastern Front or something. Because why not? They're viewing the German people as cattle and you can just use them as whatever you want. And the resistance and the outcry on social media, on X, especially from the right wing, but then even from mainstream media at some point when they couldn't hide it anymore, was so large that the German defense minister took it off the table again. What I want to say with that is we see that the people actually have power. You have power. I have power. We all have power. They can't do whatever they want. It's still a democracy, or these are still kind of democracies, or not kind of. We shouldn't even be so dismissive about this whole thing. We live in democracies. In the end, the media also depends on us. We are also the media. And so massive resistance can work even in Germany, even in the Netherlands, which is in a very bad shape, when they wanted to introduce the non-realized capital gains tax. I mean, complete insanity. Some left-wing politicians said, oh, why don't we just tax everyone, the rich, like you, on their gains that they didn't realize? And of course, it's the end of an economy. And what was very encouraging too is there was such a huge outcry that he took it off the table. So we have to learn there is real power. And I think when you look at the United States, what's going on the ground, the resistance against this war is through the roof. Of course, if you only watch Fox News, you might not really get it. But even for Fox News, there were some doubts. But the other mainstream media that is anti-Trump, of course, is against that. Not really, because they're also pro-war. But mostly the alternative media. Look at Tucker Carlson. Look at Nick Fuentes, of course. Look at Megyn Kelly. If you hate any of these guys, it doesn't matter if you hate them. They are the most influential people on the right in terms of steering opinions. Then look at the super mainstream guys. Theo Von, Joe Rogan. They are really the base of Trump. Without them, Trump cannot win. The GOP cannot win. And increasingly, the Democrats might have a problem without them. So these people are militantly opposed to this whole Alex Jones, of all people. So the resistance is just overwhelming. And if you think Trump can just rule against his own people, the American people, and especially the Trump people, you're delusional. This is not how it works. And if there's one person in the world who is super synced with public opinion, it is Trump. There was actually an interview by Trump where he said, unfortunately, I can't put boots on the ground or something like that because the American people don't like it. That's what he said, I think, 3 days ago in an interview. So he knows exactly what's going on. He knows the resistance is too large. It's not even about all the rational points that the economy is going to break down and all the strategic implications. I think this doesn't even matter. What matters for democratic politicians and the media is if you stand up, you the people, they will lose. They will do what you want. Just needs to be enough of us, and we have to be effective enough to voice our opinion. And then things will happen. That's very important to understand. In Europe, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Scandinavia, in UK maybe, we have to see about UK, but especially also in America. And that is why I'm confident this is kind of ending. Now, to the bears, to all the people who are now wanting to be smart and saying, well, it doesn't matter. The supply destruction leads to demand destruction. The damage that has been done cannot be fixed. You know my channel. You know Pioneer Lands. This is bogus. We live in the age of AGI. Do we really think all that stuff cannot be fixed? No one cares. Of course it can be fixed. If the war doesn't get inflamed again, oil can be fixed. All these infrastructures can be fixed. We can reroute stuff. No problem. So I would not overestimate this. Of course, we have elevated oil prices for a long time now, but not that elevated. Maybe 80, whatever, 70 instead of 60. No one cares. Literally no one cares. So this means I am positioning myself for more aggressive portfolio stances. I am under 100% invested. Normally, I'm significantly over 100% invested because I'm fundamentally bullish on the age of AGI. And if you look at Tesla, we are now back to 360. Let's see, post 364. So that's still a massive, massive drop from where we were before, even, a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Let's see. Where have we been here? Yeah, even a week ago, look at this. We peaked at 380. Can you believe that? And here's where I divested and said, this is just too much for me at 362. I got out as much as I could. And I think that was the right move because we were entering huge risk. And I'm very happy if you can manage a trade like that. You take risk off the table, you completely de-risk it by 45%, and you're back in where you left. That's a huge win, by the way, in case you don't understand how risk works. So I'm happy I did that. I got also a little off here. I was still leveraged. Here or something at the 390 range. And then I realized this is all getting out of hand. So I'm pretty happy how I handled the whole thing. But we have to also be quick on our feet. This is about investing, and some of the not long-term part of my portfolio is about trading. And we are now in bull territory. So don't be scared of these 5% up. And say, oh, did I miss the train? Are you kidding me? You didn't miss the train. The train is here, is at 480. That's the train. So we have $120 to go up before we even are where we were in December. Robotaxi is probably coming or not. We have to discuss that. If you are interested in other stocks, it doesn't matter. This, what I'm saying, is basically true for all stocks. Look at NVDA. NVIDIA is up 5 points to 183. I think NVIDIA took me through that whole crisis nicely. I shifted some from Tesla to NVIDIA because NVIDIA is much more fundamentally backed right now. NVIDIA should be through the roof. NVIDIA should be at 210, 220. Let's see if we get there. I think we are sitting on a coiled spring. That's what I said before. I think now the resistance that kept this coiled spring coiled is more or less gone. We have to still watch out a little bit what's happening, but I think it's pretty much risk on now, and I will position myself accordingly. Put back a lot of additional Tesla, NVIDIA, micro strategy. I think crypto is absolutely going through the roof recently. Let's see where we are at. 71,000, so we went up dramatically, obviously. Look at this. And crypto held through this whole thing very nicely. So it's time to also look at that. I think we are preparing for a huge run in crypto. In Ethereum and Bitcoin, I'm only looking at these two as part of a larger theme, AI blockchain. This is all happening. So in general, I think April is now ready to run. Be cautious what you're doing, of course. I'm just sharing what I'm doing. You always have to watch out. These things can change very quickly. Keep a core position long term. Then you're safe with key stocks like Tesla, NVIDIA, and so on. The tactical trading needs a lot of attention. I hope that was interesting. Go to pioneerlands.org where we discuss all these things in real time. And see you tomorrow.